Ask a tourist about dangerous animals in Florida and you get one word: alligator. Ask somebody who's lived here 20 years and you get something stranger. You don't get animals at all, you get a list of places. Don't swim in that lake. Don't walk that trail after the sun drops. Don't clear that brush pile without standing still and listening first. Don't let the dog out between dusk and dawn. Nobody writes those rules down. They get handed to you in a parking lot, at a boat ramp, over a fence, and when you ask why, the answer is a shrug and some version of "you just don't." That shrug is what this video is about. Behind every one of those rules is an animal, and behind every animal is a person who learned it the hard way, in a town you can find on a map. So we're not ranking these by size or venom or who wins a fight. We're ranking them by ground, by how much of this state the people who actually live here have quietly stopped using. Number 12 costs you 30 feet of your own backyard. Number 1. On a Monday morning in May of 2025, cost an 89-year-old man the last 100 yards between his front door and his back fence. Watch the map in the corner. By the end of this list, it's full. Subscribe before we start. Number 12. The green iguana. Here's the first piece of Florida that got handed over, and it's small enough that nobody noticed the transaction. Drive the canal streets of Boca Raton on a warm morning, and they're lined up on the seawalls like decoration. 4 feet long, motionless, prehistoric in a way that photographs beautifully. Tourists stop the car. Kids throw them mango. The green iguana is a digger. Females excavate burrows to lay 20 to 70 eggs, and they dig into the softest ground available, which on a waterfront lot means directly behind the seawall, under the pool deck, beneath the slab. Florida's own wildlife agency lists collapsed sidewalks, failed seawalls, and undermined foundations among the documented damage. And here's what turns a nuisance into a decision. That kind of damage generally isn't something a homeowner's policy covers. Then the other half. Iguanas defecate on the surfaces they bask on. Docks, boat covers, directly into the pool. Their droppings can carry salmonella. They rarely bite. A big male cornered in breeding season will. And he'll whip a tail built like a length of cable. But that isn't the point. The point is that in some of the most expensive zip codes in this state, people stopped walking barefoot on their own docks. And if you ask them why, they say the iguana's the way you'd say the weather. Number 11. The Portuguese man-o'-war. Number 12 took 30 feet. This one takes the whole beach, but only on certain days, and the locals know which ones before they leave the house. Start with what it isn't. The Portuguese man-o'-war is not a jellyfish. It's a siphonophore, a colony of separate organisms fused into something that behaves like one animal. That blue-violet balloon on the surface is a gas-filled float, and it isn't swimming. It has no propulsion at all. It goes exactly where the wind pushes it, which is why they arrive in the same conditions every time. A hard onshore wind, and suddenly there are dozens on the sand. On the southeast coast, the season runs roughly November through April. On the panhandle, you'll see purple flags up beside the red ones in spring. That purple flag is the entire local vocabulary, dangerous marine life, and people here read the flagpole before they read the water. Below the float, the tentacles are the problem. Boca Raton lifeguards warn about tentacles trailing 15 to 30 feet, and they've been reported far longer, which means the animal you can clearly see and the part that can reach you are not in the same place. And the detail that catches everyone, a man-o'-war on the sand, deflating, obviously dead, is still armed. The stinging cells fire mechanically. They don't need the animal alive. Every year somebody picks one up because it looks like a blue plastic bag, or a bare foot comes down on a tentacle lying loose 20 feet from the float it came off. Number 10, the southern stingray. A man-of-war costs you a day. This one changed how an entire coastline walks into the ocean, and it never gives the ground back. There's a way to spot a Floridian on a Gulf beach, and it has nothing to do with the tan. Visitors run in, high knees, splashing, straight ahead. Locals slide their feet forward along the bottom without lifting them, like shuffling across a floor in socks. Cities from Clearwater to Indian Shores print instructions for it. It has a name, the Stingray Shuffle. They do it because of an animal that has no interest in them at all. Rays move into the warm shallows roughly April through October and settle onto the bottom, working their wings until sand covers everything but their eyes, 5 to 10 yards off the beach, exactly the strip where nobody's paying attention. Even in clear water, a buried ray is close to invisible. The barb isn't a hunting weapon. It's on the tail, sheathed, venom-loaded, and it works like a scorpion's. The tail whips up and over the body in a reflex that only fires when something pins the animal down, which is precisely what a heel does. The wound is a deep puncture, and fragments of the spine can break off inside the leg, which is why emergency rooms sometimes x-ray a foot for what looks like a small hole. Hot water helps. Ice and tourniquets do not. Nationally, rays cause something like 1,000 to 2,000 injuries a year, and deaths are almost unheard of. This animal will not kill you, and it still rewrote the first 10 yards of the Gulf for everybody who lives on it. Number 9. The Africanized honeybee. Robert E. Davis was 51 years old and had spent 3 years living in the remote northwest corner of Okeechobee County, in a stretch of country people out there called the Prairie. Mailboxes are scarce, dirt roads turn into grass roads. He was taking apart a trailer on his property when he disturbed a hive. He was stung more than 100 times. He died the following day. State agriculture officials sent an inspector who sprayed the colony and collected 30 bee carcasses for analysis. They were identified with high probability as Africanized honeybees. It was the first death attributed to them in Florida, and the state noted that in the years before it, at least 5 dogs, along with goats and horses, had died in attacks where the animals were stung thousands of times. Now here's the myth this animal destroys. People hear killer bee and assume a stronger sting. It's the opposite. A single Africanized bee delivers less venom than a European honeybee. The bee is about 10% smaller. Side by side, you could not tell them apart. The state has to run lab measurements to confirm an identification. The danger isn't chemistry, it's arithmetic, and its speed. An Africanized colony defends its nest at a threshold so much lower that it changes what counts as a dangerous act. State officials describe the trigger not as approaching a hive, but as a machine, a weed eater, a mower, a chainsaw. Vibration is enough. And the response isn't a few bees. One sting releases an alarm pheromone that recruits the colony, so the second sting arrives with hundreds behind it. They pursue further and stay agitated longer. You cannot stand your ground and swat your way out. Cover your face, leave, keep leaving. Florida's first confirmed Africanized honeybee turned up in Tampa Bay in 2002. The state built the country's first detection program around it. Close to 500 bait hives near ports, along Interstate 10 and the Alabama line, checked every 3 weeks. Eradication was never realistic. A large share of South Florida's wild honeybee colonies are now Africanized, which is why, in rural Florida, clearing brush stopped being a casual Saturday job. You look, you listen, you find the hive before the mower does. Number 8. The Argentine black and white tegu. Now the numbers do the work. In 2012, fewer than 200 Argentine black and white tegus were trapped in Miami-Dade County. By 2017, the number trapped in a single year had passed 1,000. Through 2022, more than 6,000 verified tegu reports had been logged in that county alone. And it isn't just Miami-Dade. The state lists established breeding populations in Hillsborough, Charlotte, Miami-Dade, and St. Lucie. 4 separate corners of Florida, all of them starting the same way. An unregulated pet trade, animals that outgrew their owners, and releases nobody was ever held accountable for. This is one of the largest lizards in the Western Hemisphere. 4 to 5 feet, thick-bodied, built low and wide with a heavy jaw. Females lay around 35 eggs a year, and unlike most tropical invaders, cold doesn't stop it. Tegus have survived below freezing temperatures here by burrowing down and waiting it out. That single trait is why federal researchers have flagged the entire southeastern United States as at risk if releases continue. What it actually does is eat nests. Researchers examined 124 tegu stomachs from the urban fringe of Miami-Dade and found vertebrate remains in 39% of them. Frogs, lizards, snakes, turtles, small mammals. Tegus have been documented taking eggs, including from alligator nests. In the Everglades, where restoration depends on native species holding on, that isn't a nuisance, that's a mechanism. For people, the risk is unglamorous and specific. Tegus burrow under sheds, slabs, and crawl spaces, and they raid chicken coops. They aren't timid, and one cornered in the confined space uses everything it has. A bite with real crushing pressure, claws, and a tail it swings like a club. Which is why in Homestead, and in the neighborhood south of Riverview, there's a rule nobody wrote down. You don't reach under the shed without looking first. Number 7. The feral hog. This animal has been in Florida longer than any other on the list, including the people who'll tell you about it. In 1539, Hernando de Soto landed on the southwest coast with a herd of pigs as a walking food supply. He never found the gold. The pigs found something better: Nearly 5 centuries later, there are at least 500,000 wild hogs in Florida, some estimates run higher, across all 67 counties. Only Texas has more. Densities run highest in big forested tracts with water and limited access. North and west of Lake Okeechobee, the Green Swamp, the pine and palmetto of Ocala National Forest. The reason they can't be removed is reproductive. A sow produces 2 litters a year, 6 to 13 piglets each. University of Florida biologists have put it plainly, even under heavy hunting pressure, you're not getting rid of them. An adult runs 5 to 6 feet nose to tail and can top 200 pounds, and those tusks that look decorative are canine teeth used for rooting and for defense. A boar travels alone. Sows and offspring travel in groups called sounders. That's the part that matters, because the encounter people describe isn't one animal deciding to charge. It's walking into a sounder in low light, cutting a sow off from her young without knowing you've done it, and having the whole thing resolve in about 2 seconds. Add the disease load, pseudorabies and brucellosis among them, and you understand why the USDA warns about dogs making contact with a carcass. So on the trails around Ocala, the rule is about the clock. Nobody walks a dog through thick palmetto at dusk. Not because a hog will hunt you, but because at dusk, in cover, you don't see the sounder until you're inside it. We're halfway. Look at the map, 5 pins, and everything so far has cost people something they could live without. A dock, a strip of surf, an hour of daylight. The back half is different. From here on, one animal has closed sections of a Florida state park to the public. One has an aerial spray program written around it, and the last one takes those 100 yards I mentioned at the start, the ones between a man's front door and his own back fence. Before that, I put the practical version of all of this into one place, the Dangerous Animals Survival Handbook. Threat profiles across the country that never made this list, how to avoid an encounter instead of reacting to one, and the first response steps that actually change outcomes, including the stings where the standard folk remedy makes it worse. Scan the code on screen or use the link below. Glove box, not bookmarks folder. Number 6, the rhesus macaque. This one starts as a bad business idea with a name attached to it. In the 1930s, a riverboat operator named Colonel Toohey, Colonel was his actual first name, not a rank, decided his tours needed something extra. He put 6 rhesus macaques on a small island in the Silver River. What Toohey apparently did not know is that rhesus macaques are strong swimmers. They left. He brought more. Those left too. Today, Silver Springs State Park between Ocala and the Ocala National Forest holds a free-living population reported at roughly 200 to over 300 animals, in a population studies have projected can double without intervention. This is a state park. Glass-bottom boats, hiking trails, kayak launches, thousands of visitors, and a wild Asian primate troop that has been breeding there for 90 years. They carry herpes B. Macaques host it without symptoms. Blood samples collected by private trappers came back roughly a quarter seropositive, and CDC published research found that as many as 30% of the park's macaques can actively shed the virus in saliva, urine, and feces. Shedding rises when the animals are stressed, including during the fall mating season when male aggression spikes. In humans, herpes B is a low-incidence, high-consequence problem. About 50 documented cases since 1932, 21 of them fatal, others leaving permanent neurological damage. And here I'm going to be straight with you because a lot of videos won't be. There has never been a confirmed case of a human catching herpes B from a wild macaque. Not once. The transmission risk from this specific population is genuinely uncertain, and anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something. What is not uncertain is the behavior. State authorities logged 23 reports of macaques biting people in or near the park across a 7-year window in the late 70s and early 80s. In 2017, sections of the park were closed to visitors because the monkeys were turning aggressive. Roaming males have turned up more than 100 miles out. Ocala, the villages, as far as Sarasota and Tallahassee. Every other animal so far took private ground. Number 6 is the only one that has taken public ground and closed it. Number 5, the blacktip and spinner shark. Volusia County has more recorded shark bites than any place on Earth. Not the most in Florida, the most anywhere. more. The International Shark Attack File has logged over 300 in the county since 1882, 343 through 2023, more than double the next worst county in the state. It holds a Guinness World Record for it. It has a nickname, Shark Bite Capital of the World, and the surf lineup at the New Smyrna Jetty is packed every single morning. That contradiction is the most useful thing in this video, so let's take it apart. The mechanism sits just north of where most bites happen, Ponce Inlet. Water flushing out of it carries dense schools of mullet and menhaden. It's also a high-energy stretch of coast that churns up sediment and produces the reliable waves that made the place a surf destination. Three things stack in the same water: enormous amounts of prey, visibility near zero, and a very high density of humans with their limbs in it. The sharks doing the biting are mostly small coastal species, blacktips and spinners, often juveniles, hunting fish about the size and flash of a foot or a hand. The result is what you'd predict: a fast, investigative bite that ends immediately, almost always on a limb. Hundreds of bites across more than a century, and no confirmed fatality on the county's record, which is why locals still paddle out. But watch how. Not at dawn or dusk. Not in the mouth of the inlet on an outgoing tide. Not where birds are diving or bait is flickering at the surface. No shiny jewelry. Here's the trap though. Volusia teaches a lesson that doesn't transfer. People take shark bites or minor from the most bitten beach on the planet and carry it into inlets and river mouths elsewhere in Florida, where the species working murky, shallow water are considerably larger. Number 4. The Florida Panther. A family moves out to Golden Gate Estates for the space, 2.5 acres of slash pine and palmetto scrub on the eastern edge of Naples, room for what wildlife officials politely call hobby livestock: goats, donkeys, mini horses, chickens. Then one morning, there's a goat missing, and a photograph on a neighbor's phone of something standing on their back porch. Golden Gate is thousands of platted acres wedged between two Floridas. On one side, a Gulf Coast city of beaches and resorts. On the other, the largest expanse of wilderness east of the Mississippi, Big Cypress, the Florida Panther National Wildlife Refuge, Everglades National Park. The panther nearly disappeared, down to perhaps 30 animals. Then it came back, and biologists now put the population between roughly 120 and 230. That recovery is a genuine conservation success story, and its bill lands almost entirely on one county. In a single year, wildlife officials investigated a record 32 panther attacks on pets and livestock, all of them in Collier, killing more than 50 animals. Collier has led the state in documented panther interactions for years. There are yellow crossing signs on Collier Boulevard. There are photographs of panthers on porches. So the state's guidance to residents isn't about protecting themselves. It's about architecture. Move pets and livestock into enclosures that are fenced and roofed, dusk until dawn. Extension offices built model pens and ran workshops so people could copy the design. And now the part you were waiting for, and the reason this placement is going to start an argument in the comments, which it should. There is no confirmed record of a Florida panther attacking a human being in the history of this state. Not one. State wildlife commissioners have said it on the record. Fact checkers went looking and came back with nothing, so put it lower then. Except look at what it actually did. An entire style of Florida living, the semi-rural homestead, the whole reason people moved east of Naples, now runs on a curfew, and the goat pen needs a ceiling. Number 4 has never touched a person here, and it still took every hour between sunset and sunrise from thousands of people on their own land. Number 3, the American alligator. 25 minutes from downtown Orlando, there's a 16,000-acre lake that people simply do not swim in. Not shouldn't, don't. It isn't posted at every access point, and nobody in Oviedo or Winter Springs or Sanford needs it explained to them. Lake Jessup sits on the middle basin of the St. Johns River, and its average depth is about 6 feet. 6! You could stand up across most of it. Estimates of its alligator population run from roughly 12,000 to 14,500 animals, on the order of 400 per square mile of shoreline, the highest concentration per acre of any lake in Florida, and possibly anywhere. The reason is a piece of history almost nobody knows. In the 60s and 70s, the American alligator was federally protected as endangered, and Central Florida was being bulldozed at speed. Alligators standing in the way of that development couldn't legally be killed. They had to go somewhere. Jessup became the somewhere. That lake is functionally where Orlando put the alligators it displaced while building itself. Their descendants are still in there. Statewide, there are an estimated 1.3 million alligators across all 67 counties. So let me kill the myth that runs through every video like this one. one, the 30-mile-an-hour land sprint. It isn't real. A big alligator can lunge and cover ground in a short burst, but it is not running you down across a field. And building your caution around outrunning one gets the danger exactly backwards. The real danger is 3 feet from a bank at dusk in 6 inches of water, with an animal that has spent its entire life around people and no longer treats them as a reason to leave. Feeding collapses the last of that margin. It's illegal, it happens constantly, and a fed alligator has been taught that a human shape means food is coming. Number 3 didn't take a strip or an hour. It took an entire lake, permanently inside a major metro, and the locals gave it up so completely that nobody there even frames it as a loss. Number 2, the mosquito. In late May of 2023, a patient came into Sarasota Memorial Hospital with a fever nobody could place. No recent travel, nothing that fit. Staff weren't looking for it, and the diagnosis only came because a technician in the hospital's own laboratory noticed parasites in a blood sample and said the word out loud. Malaria, acquired in Sarasota County, Florida. Malaria was eliminated from the United States in 1951. The last locally transmitted cases before this were in Palm Beach County in 2003, 8 of them, 20 years earlier. Then, between May and July of 2023, 7 people who had not left the country were diagnosed with malaria, and all 7 lived within a 4-mile radius of each other in Sarasota County. 10 locally transmitted cases turned up nationally that year, across 4 states. Florida had most of them, in one neighborhood. Mosquito management services flooded the area. Trucks, aircraft, crews on foot, targeting Anopheles, the genus that carries the parasite and never actually left the United States. More than 100 mosquito samples went to a CDC lab. 3 came back positive, and all 3 had been collected from the same woodlot. That's this animal's whole story in one image. Not a swamp, not the Everglades, a woodlot at the edge of ordinary Gulf Coast subdivisions, inside a 4-mile circle with aircraft going over it at night. And Sarasota isn't the only place. In 2020, more than 70 locally acquired dengue cases were recorded in Key Largo, in the Upper Keys. Monroe County has logged more since 2012. Every time, a health advisory, door-to-door property inspections, enhanced trapping, aerial and truck treatments. The vector there is Aedes aegypti, and it breaks the rule everyone thinks they know. It doesn't wait for dawn and dusk. It bites in broad daylight. It doesn't need a marsh either. It breeds in a flower pot, a fold in a pool tarp, a bird bath, a bottle cap. It isn't in the wild part of Florida at all. It's in the container you forgot to empty. Now, I know exactly what some of you are typing. A mosquito shouldn't outrank an alligator. Say that out loud and then look at the criterion again. The alligator took a lake you were never going to swim in. This one took a screened porch on a summer evening in Sarasota and got 2 counties to spray from the air to try and take it back. Number 1, the Florida black bear. For 100 years, Florida had one sentence about bears and everybody used it. They've never killed anyone here. It was true, and the official record backed it up. State wildlife officials field an average of about 6,300 bear-related calls a year. Since the 1970s, when comprehensive record keeping began, they had documented 42 incidents of a wild black bear making physical contact with a person, 3 serious enough to require medical treatment, 0 deaths. In a state with somewhere around 4,000 bears and a population that keeps building into their range, that record was extraordinary, and it made people comfortable. On the morning of May 5th, 2025, the Collier County Sheriff's Office notified state wildlife officers of a possible fatal wildlife encounter in Jerome, a small rural community in the southwest interior. A family had reported a relative missing. There were signs of recent disturbance around the property. Robert Markle was 89 years old. His remains were found about 100 yards from his house. His dog had been killed nearby. Investigators found evidence of a physical encounter between a bear and a person and determined that a bear had entered the home. Officers removed 3 bears from the area, 207 pounds, 263 pounds, and 434 pounds. An attempt to trap a 4th was unsuccessful. The necropsy on the 263-pound animal found partial remains. DNA testing placed that bear on Markle, inside his house, and on his dog. All 3 bears tested negative for rabies. It was confirmed as the first fatal Florida black bear attack in the recorded history of the state. Jerome sits in the South Bear Management Unit, which held an estimated 1,044 bears as of the last full count and has been growing since. And this is the part nobody wants to sit with. In the 12 months before Markell died, wildlife officers received 16 bear-related calls within 10 miles of nearby Copeland, 5 site visits, 5 capture efforts, 3 bears relocated and hazed, 1 killed. None of this came out of nowhere. It came out of a place where the bear population was rising, the calls were already stacking up, and the animals had learned that houses are where food is. A food-conditioned bear isn't a bear that lost its fear of you. It's a bear that was taught, by people, that fear was unnecessary. Look at the map now. Every other pin on it is ground people could afford to give up. A dock, 10 yards of surf, an hour of daylight, a park trail, a lake nobody needed. Number 1 took the last 100 yards, the distance between a man's front door and his own back fence, in the one place Floridians never thought they'd have to negotiate for. That sentence this state used for 100 years stopped being true on a Monday morning in May. Florida isn't a dangerous state, it's a wild one in a very good disguise, and every unwritten local rule in it is just that wildness translated into something you can actually learn. The people who live here aren't braver than you, and they aren't more afraid. They simply know which 100 yards belong to something else. Learn the rules and the whole map opens back up.